We've just started the webinar. We'll wait a couple of beats for everyone to log in and get settled. For our EDJCC panelists, committee members, and guests, if you haven't already done so, if you could please rename yourself so we know who's joined us today. Right now, your name just indicates an EDJCC panelist. Okay. Great. We're going to get started. Welcome. Good morning. My name is Carol DeAndres, and I am the Stakeholder and Public Engagement Manager on the Master Plan for Aging here at the California Department of Aging, CDA. Happy to be with you here today for the California Health and Human Services Agency, or CAL-HHS, Elder Justice and Disability. Elder Disability Justice Coordinating Council, or EDJCC, Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council, EDJCC. Thank you. Today is May 16th, 2024, and this is the committee's second meeting for 2024. So we thank you for coming. Let's go to the next slide. I am Carol DeAndres. I am the MPA Stakeholder and Public Engagement Manager. And let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So we are holding this by webinar. You can also phone in. We have ASL interpreting. Thank you very much, Tulip and Anna. You have Zoom, you have closed captioning available through your Zoom functions. And meeting slides, transcript, and recording will be posted after this webinar to the California Health and Human Services, CAL-HHS Master Plan for Aging webpage. And again, I want to remind our EDJCC committee members and invited guests, if you haven't already, please right-click in the upper right of your video and select rename so we know who has joined us today. Next slide. We welcome you to this virtual meeting. We have a few virtual meeting operations. The chat function is enabled for committee members, California Department of Aging, staff, and other invited guests to share out meeting-related resources and information. And the public is able to view that content during the meeting. The chat and the question and answer functions are not enabled for comments and questions from public attendees, but we do invite you to provide comments during the public comment period towards the end of the agenda. And of course, public comments can be taken anytime, or questions can be directed to our email box. It is engage, ENGAGE at aging.ca.gov. Next slide. So just a few comments regarding public comment period. Attendees by phone, press *9, and that will indicate that a hand is raised. We'll unmute your line. And of course, those attending by the Zoom functions have a raised hand icon available to them. And this will raise your hand and we will unmute your line. And do note, public comments are limited to 2 minutes so that we have an occasion to get to everyone here that wishes to give a public comment. And of course, at any time, please email your comments to engage, ENGAGE at aging.ca.gov. Next slide. So now I'm going to turn it over to the Elder and Disability Justice Specialist here at the California Department of Aging. It is Ranjana Maharaj. Go ahead.
Thanks, Carol. Hi, everyone. My name is Ranjana Maharaj, and I have the privilege of serving as the Elder Justice Specialist for the California Department of Aging. I want to thank everyone who was able to join today as we gather to discuss and address critical issues surrounding elder justice in California. So before we delve into our agenda items, I'd like to take a moment to revisit the council purpose and to go over our equity guiding principles. The goal of the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council is to increase coordination and develop recommendations to prevent and address the abuse, neglect, exploitation, and fraud perpetrated against older adults and adults with disabilities. Next slide, please. Our equity guiding principles, as we recognize the past, current interventions and services to prevent mistreatment have had negative consequences for some victims, families, and communities as a result of systemic discrimination and biases. To counter these negative impacts and to ensure equity and inclusion moving forward, we're committed to letting the following principles of all aspects of our work: planning, coordination, and program development. Next slide, please. Number one, we recognize that all adults deserve to live free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We acknowledge the existence of systemic racism, discrimination, negative impacts, and in order to combat its impacts, we must center equity at all stages of our council's work. 3, centering around equity does not just mean creating equitable solutions for older adults and adults living with disabilities, but also recognizing that implicit bias exists within all of us. And we're committed as a group to acknowledge and explore biases while doing the work of this council. Number 4, we acknowledge that while older adults and adults living with disabilities have many overlapping interests, they are distinct communities, and any policies that are observed or recommended by this council should examine impacts to each community. Number 5, we recognize the importance of hearing directly from older adults and adults living with disabilities. Their lived experiences should always be centered as we move forward with the work of this council. Our council serves as a platform for collaboration, innovation, and collective action, and we're here to amplify the voices of older adults and adults with disabilities, address systemic challenges, and safeguard their rights. So with this purpose in mind, let us proceed with the next slide. Thank you, Stephanie. On the following next 3 slides, we've highlighted our esteemed EDJCC stakeholder members. These individuals play a pivotal role in furthering the work of our mission and advancing our initiatives. While we won't delve into the list in detail at this moment, we'd like to recognize and appreciate their valuable contributions. If you can please go to slide 12. The next slide, please. Thank you. For today's agenda, we'll be diving into crucial updates and discussions. We'll start with welcoming remarks, then a discussion on the 2024 Master Plan for Aging Day of Action, followed by a facilitated discussion from our EDJCC subcommittee chairs on the 2024 initiatives. After a short 10-minute break, we have two exciting presentations, one for the Older Americans Act Final Rule, and Clarity, which is financial planning for the future. We'll wrap up with public comments and next steps. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our California Department of Aging's Deputy Director, Sarah Steenhausen, who's standing in today on behalf of Director DeMorris.
Thank you so much, Ranjana. It's a pleasure to be here. And on behalf of Director Susan DeMorris, thank you all for being here. And I especially want to appreciate both the work of our chair, Bertha Hayden, as well as our subcommittee chairs, Vivian Baku and Achilles Saran, who have played a critical role in working with all of you to elevate and advance the issues that impact older adults and people with disabilities, and to ensure that, as Ranjana outlined, that we are able to prevent and elder abuse and disability abuse and neglect, but also ensure that people have the opportunity to live with dignity and independence. And really appreciate all of the work in developing the equity principles and the purpose statement of this committee. So just a few remarks to get us started. I think this agenda looks amazing and really look forward to hearing the reflections of the subcommittees and the issues that they are elevating as we embark towards our day of action this fall, where we will hear from all of our stakeholder advisory committees with the issues that are most critical to address in the next iteration of the Master Plan for Aging. Clearly, we have a lot of time before October, but the work that's already gone forward to date, I think is getting you to an excellent place to be able to highlight those issues that are most important for this committee. It's also important to note that this committee plays a valuable role in bringing together a range of different state departments and entities that all are connected to this issue of elder and disability justice. So this is a very important opportunity for us all to come together and elevate cross-system issues. I think I would be remiss if I did not recognize that we are in a tremendously difficult budget climate right now, as you all know. And unfortunately, everybody is harmed by the budget situation right now, including older adults, people with disabilities, and family caregivers. I also want to just underscore that recognizing that, I'm really, really encouraged by the work of the Master Plan for Aging. And I think that at this point, really the work of all of you in continuing to uplift these issues has never been more important. I think it's easy to look during difficult budget times and kind of lose hope. But if anything, this is why we need to continue to advance and frame the issues so that we can continue to work on the policy solutions, and that when there is opportunity to advance the budget solutions when our fiscal situation changes. So I just want to appreciate all the work you're doing. I think it's also wonderful that today we're going to be hearing from Faye Gordon, our key federal partner at the Administration for Community Living. There's a lot of positive developments at the federal level that whether it be the updated rules for the Older Americans Act, as well as updated regulations for adult protective services. I think there's a lot of positive movement towards system change at both the federal and state level. So with that, really looking forward to the discussion today. And Ranjana, I'm going to pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jackie Tompkins, our Master Plan for Aging Project Director with the California Department of Aging. Jackie?
Greetings, everyone. Before I go ahead and get started, just want to make sure that my audio is coming through clearly. Fantastic.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Thank you, Carol. Thanks for having me all this afternoon. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet, my name is Jackie Tompkins. I serve as the Master Plan for Aging Project Director here at the California Department of Aging. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time this morning talking you through our exciting event that's happening this fall called California for All Ages and Ability, our 2024 MPA Day of Action. Next slide. So as many of you are aware, California's Master Plan for Aging, again, is not designed to sit on a shelf, but is rather a document, a blueprint to ensure that we revisit it on a continuous basis to ensure that the activities, initiatives, and goals of Master Plan for Aging continues to be responsive and also adaptive to changing environments, new information, and resources. And so we come together every other year to reissue a new set of priority initiatives for California's Master Plan for Aging, all focused still on those 5 bold goals. So this year, we're hosting this event on Tuesday, October 8th, here in Sacramento. While we don't have the full date or times of such event, we do expect it to be pretty much a full day of activities, and we look to have our registration available and open for this event in May or in mid-June. I do want to personally thank our MPA philanthropic partners for helping us to support this event and allow us to bring together diverse partners from our federal, state, and local organizations to really discuss priority issues that are impacting older adults, people with disabilities, and their caregivers. So moving on to the next slide, want to describe just some of the key aims of why we hold this event. And one of the key purposes of holding and hosting this event is to ensure that, again, we are able to revisit our existing initiatives, look at those initiatives, and also as needed, refine, rejuvenate, and even develop new initiatives to ensure that, again, our work towards 2030 is really focused on those priority issues facing Californians. We also like to ensure that we have this event and also embed equity and the lived experience of consumers of programs and resources. And so we're inviting all our Master Plan for Aging stakeholder committees, including the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council, to provide the state with priority recommendations based on your areas of expertise, as well as what you're hearing from your organizations and the consumers you support. The information that you all provide to us, in addition to the other stakeholder committees that help to inform California's MPA, will be a part of the development of the new MPA initiatives for the next 2 years. So we're looking at 2025 to 2026. This event is also a time to highlight the progress that California's Master Plan for Aging has made to date, but also to renew our shared commitment from a whole of government approach as well as a whole of society approach of California's 10-year blueprint. We're right in the middle of implementing California's Master Plan for Aging, so it's pivotal that we are able to reflect on the impacts that the Master Plan for Aging has made, but also to think about how we can build upon that momentum, that success, to further advance California's 5 bold goals. And at this convening, recognizing that the issues that impact older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers are diverse and they're cross sectors, we do look to bring diverse partners to this event. This includes our state partners, national partners, as well as local partners. And we feel that California is in a unique and leading position in which we can host such an event and be able to be a model for other states, other leaders, as we collectively prepare our nation as well as our state for our aging population changing demographics. Going on to the next slide. I mentioned that the MPA stakeholder committees have been asked to provide the state with recommendations, again, based on their subject matter expertise, as well as the priority issues that their respective committees work on. And this is just to show you a basic roadmap of how we're working with each stakeholder committee to get to the place where we can have recommendations and priority areas to turn into initiatives that are really going to advance those 5 bold goals. So some of you might be familiar with this framework. This is the performance partnership model, in which it asks 4 questions. We want to know collectively, where are we now? When we think about the issues that impact older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers, it's important for us to establish a baseline and understand truly what is the core problem and develop a core problem statement, because that's foundational to identifying recommended strategies to advance the MPA. We also want to hear directly from the MPA stakeholder committees about, when you think about what success looks like if we were to implement X, Y, and Z, how would that look to a community member? How would that look to a family member? An older adult, a person with disability. So it's really helpful to be able to forecast and think through, we have this problem, what does success look like, and how can we define success? How can we define progress so we're also tracking the implementation of the MPA and being able to highlight the successes and value that the MPA brings and the spirit of the MPA. So once we are able to identify where we are now and establish that baseline and think about the future, we start then thinking about, well, how do we get there? And this is about brainstorming recommendations and strategies that you all want to put forth to the state to address those underlying problems and issues that you want to elevate. And this is an opportunity that you can share everything with your group and also come to consensus about how you want to structure and word your recommendations so it gets to those core problems. And then lastly, because the MPA is about accountability and being able to track our progress, we want to also hear from the MPA stakeholder committees Well, if we are to implement such recommendation and priority, how will we be able to track what individuals within the state are receiving and reaching towards those outcomes? So thinking about outputs as well as outcomes, so we can track the progress of, again, the master plan for aging. So each of our 6 stakeholder committees that help to inform and advise on the master plan for aging are going through a similar process, again, to essentially provide the state a set of recommendations that we can then use to inform the next iteration of our initiatives for 2025 to 2026. The last slide I want to show to all of you is just a summary of how we're exploring the day of action to look like on October 8th. So again, acknowledging that equity needs to be baked into everything we do within the master plan for aging. And we want to ground the day in hearing directly from consumers. We heard from the 2022 event that hearing directly from consumers is where that strength is, understanding the issues at a core level of how those issues impact somebody's ability to live well and thrive and have choices. So we want to hear directly from consumers. So we are aiming to have a shared lived experience discussion, as well as we're also exploring within our broader context of the master plan for aging of embedding an age and disability lived experience advisory board. So we hope to be able to introduce further this concept at the day of action and maybe even have a few members of that advisory board be introduced, but that's all in the planning stages right now. And then we want to move forward and have our day to be inclusive of 2 core panels that really look at advancing an equity-informed home and community care system for all, as well as a panel focused on ensuring affordable access to housing, services, and supports. And within these panel discussions, we're looking to bring MPA stakeholder committee members together with consumers, with members of our legislature, administration, and state agencies to talk about these issues from diverse perspectives. So we're looking to have, again, fireside chats or communications about these topics to demonstrate the integration, alignment, and opportunities for change. And then also looking to have the session be speak to the intersection and alignment of aging and disability, and then ending the day with having a conversation with budget and policy staff. So while this agenda is subject to change as we are just in the planning stages, I just wanted to share with you just an overview of what you can expect at the event as an attendee as well as a committee member. So I'm going to pause there and see if there's any immediate questions about the day itself, or even the role of the MPA stakeholder committee members, or any type of discussion. So I'll turn it over to Rajana to see if anybody has their hand up, or we can discuss throughout the meeting. Thank you all.
I don't see anyone with their hand up, Jackie. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to send a question through the Engage mailbox, and we'd be happy to answer that for you.
And one more thing to add, just super quick, Rajana, is members of the committee, you all should already have an invitation in your calendar to attend the event. If for some reason it's not on there already, please connect with us and we'll be sure to add you. We are actually doing formal save the dates launching today. So just want to make sure that you all have that information as well. But October 8th here in Sacramento. Look forward to seeing and meeting everyone.
Thank you, Jackie. A lot to think about for the next day of action and the recommendations for the next iteration of the MPA. Next, I would like to introduce our esteemed subcommittee chairs who play a crucial role in advancing the mission of our council and addressing critical issues for our Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council and the subcommittees. We have Vivian Mabaku, our Legal Services Chair, Akili Saran, our APS Chair, and Bertha Hayden, our conservatorship chair, and the EDJCC stakeholder co-chair. I'll go ahead and pass it on to the chairs.
Thanks, Ranjana. So we have a chunk of time on the agenda for us to discuss a few things. We do have some slides, but we'll be getting to them later. But we first wanted to start off just discussing a few things that have happened since the last full council meeting that concern all three subcommittee groups. So first off, we wanted to give everyone thanks, everyone on the council, for providing their commentary with such a quick turnaround for the federal EDJCC comments that we submitted on behalf of the council. The federal EDJCC, which is what we modeled this council off of, recently released that they were interested in public input on their council and improving the ways that their council operates and interacts with the public. And we were able to send out a survey to all the council members to provide their input on what they think would be good recommendations. And we put all those together and submitted a letter. That specific instance had an incredibly quick turnaround. I think we only had like a week and a half to get all of the comments together. And so we really appreciate everyone being able to get their comments in, get their input in so that we could make that quick turnaround. And we also just appreciate people staying engaged, because these opportunities do tend to have really quick turnarounds, and we want to make sure that we get the input of the full council meeting for the full council. And in connection to that, we just wanted to remind people that the federal EDJCC is having a full meeting on June 12th. So we encourage members to attend and provide input during the public comment section. That will be also online. I'm not sure if anyone has a link to that to put into the chat, but that is an open committee meeting for the public. And going forward, we do have plans to try to invite a member of the federal EDJCC to present to the California Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council, just to comment on their work and provide some insight on the work that they've done at the federal level and ways that we could potentially integrate that work at our level as well. And I'll pass it over to Berta.
Good morning, everyone. I also just want to echo what Vivian said about gratitude in terms of the short turnaround, and encourage us all to attend the federal meeting on June 12th to get an understanding of their system, and to see as we go forward what values or more coordination we might want to adopt incorporate with our own model. Many of us, it was wonderful. Vivian, Achilles, and I had a chance to, for the first time, personally meet many of council members at the ASA conference in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. And during that time, I got a chance to connect with you, and some of you share more your personal insights of where you think we should be going in our subcommittees, the important issues that have been coming up. And we wanted to take a little bit of time on the agenda to reflect with some of the key takeaways and invite you to share some of the key takeaways. As had been shared by Jackie, one of the things that as we go into the day of action, things quickly change in our climates. And as we strive to create strong structures to serve older adults and adults with disabilities, we want to make sure to incorporate some of the lessons learned, but also incorporate some of the innovations that are being thought on within our field. So we wanted to, at this portion, have a conversation, and then please invite you to unmute as we have this. Well, one of the things that we took away as importance, and Vivian really helped to frame this well, is the sustainability of programs. As was shared at the beginning, it is a difficult budgetary period. But that being what it is, we have to look at our programs and how we shape even the recommendations we do within our own subcommittees to be resilient and to be informed of whether it's great budgetary times or difficult budgetary times. What can we bake into our solutions for older adults that can have more positive outcomes? So a way that we were thinking of it was what is something that is a value that regardless of those budgetary conditions would not be impacted. And I think it was really Vivian who brought this forward. So when in terms of the value of creating partnerships and how that strengthens the infrastructure that with older adults and adults with disabilities are living in. Vivian, I'll turn it over to you to kind of dig into that.
Yeah, so we had a really great conversation at ASA about sustainability, and it was something that came up in several of the presentations. How do we, as aging advocates, as disability advocates, how do we weather bad economic times, knowing that our programs are often the first to be cut or subject to cuts? Or often our pilot projects where there's only funding for a short period of time. How do we create sustainability around the programs? And also, how do we shift our views from success only being about funding and maybe looking at success as something else, considering like success of a program that may have lost funding, there might be the success of creating new partnerships that are lasting and being able to apply for new funding opportunities with these new partners, things like that. So if anyone wants to unmute to talk about, how do we navigate this and how do we create more sustainability in the work that we're doing and build that from the beginning, like we talk about building equity into the beginning of our projects and not thinking about it after the fact. How do we think about sustainability of the projects at the beginning so that we can be prepared for when there's going to be, economic issues, because we know this is just something that's going to happen. And we need to preserve these projects and preserve the work that we're doing, and also the learnings from the work that we're doing.
Vivian, Bert, I will ask, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I strongly believe in partnerships. I think everyone in the adult protective services field and ombudsman and legal services believes in partnerships. And I think that generally in California, we have built partnerships with legal aid services, with the public guardian, long-term care ombudsman, and adult protective services. Keeping those partnerships is really the fabric, including local law enforcement, is the fabric of the response system to reports of abuse, to interventions. Absent funding, these relationships become extremely important. And at the same time, I just want to reiterate, funding is critical because many of these multidisciplinary teams to be led well with productive conversations and next steps do require to have entities that are dedicated through some funding to carry out these activities. So I just wanted to add that we should still fight for funding and worst case scenario, maintain these relationships that we've had.
Lisa?
Yeah. Thank you all for the great work you're doing, and I know the committees are really taking off and making headway in a lot of different areas. In answer to your question, I think one of the things that's really important is for us to be able to anticipate when things are happening, and I'm glad to hear that we're going to be hearing from the federal Elder Justice Coordinating Council about how they operate. I know one of the reasons for that they were established, and one of the things that we had hoped to emulate in patterning this group after that group, was the idea of bringing together, in their case, federal agencies, in our case, state agencies, to really keep us apprised of what they're doing at any given time. And I think that is really helpful in being able to anticipate needs. For example, we've been watching very closely the VOCA funding at the federal level. We knew that there were going to be cuts coming down. If we could integrate into our way of being, our way of operating, to have, regular reports from all of our state agencies that would help us anticipate what's coming down the line, and also to be able to have a really quick response and a comprehensive response, and more opportunities for those departments to be able to discuss the implications of actions and how it's going to affect all of us, and how there be ways of backfilling cuts before they come or as they come, or quickly after they come. So I just think that this this council can be a really, really powerful entity if we make it one, and make sure that we have that regular ongoing input from the state agencies and the stakeholders, and opportunities to talk. Sometimes it's difficult during these meetings. They're kind of formal. It's kind of scary to to unmute yourself. But these can really be an important way to be planning and moving forward on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Lisa. Marty?
Yes, thank you. Marty Yamoto, a dad, a family member, and also CDCAN, California Disability Aging Community Action Network. First of all, Vivian, thank you so much for your pulling this all together. I think Sarah already mentioned that in the chat, but it's really helpful. And I appreciate the comment that you made about how do we look at success? And that success also is tied to funding, but that what other things that we look at? Achilles, and Lisa, I really appreciate the comments that you made too, and I support that. But I really want to make sure that as we're looking at success, since you asked that question, that we're looking at it in a whole person-centered way, the need of that individual that's tied to the outcome for that individual. I've been pushing this for years because the way the state and counties and every form of government, even community-based organizations, the only way we measure anything is utilization numbers. And it's funding numbers. Vivian, as you were mentioning, how much money is being spent, how many people did we serve, how many people ended up going through a certain process of the services we provide. But there's no data on a consistent basis that tells us, was that individual, was that family served and helped in the right way that they needed at the right time? And until we do that, we're as bad as the state of California in terms of our criticisms that they're not meeting a need. And I'm just going to be insistent that we really, as one of the recommendations we push for, if we're really talking about equity, we got to know how the money is being spent and how it's impacting individual lives, not just communities, but individuals. And so we got to make sure that money's being spent in a way that is reaching the people and individuals and not in the communities that we are meant to serve. That's true equity. And until we do that, we're not really walking the walk. We're just talking the talk. And that's nothing against all of us. It just means we have our responsibility too, not just the state of California or the counties. We have a responsibility to find out how is this impacting the individuals that we serve. And again, I just thank you for asking that question. I know when people ask questions, it's like all kinds of stuff can come up, and that's not to take away any appreciation for all the work that we all do. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Did anyone else want to add anything else to the conversation? Yes, Valerie? I'm sorry, Valerie, I think you just need to unmute.
I can't believe I still haven't learned that rule yet. Sorry, everyone. My name's Valerie Smith. I'm a program manager with APS in Santa Clara County. And I just wanted to, I really appreciate what Marty just said, and looking at
Oh, Valerie, it's very hard to hear you.
Can you hear me now? I wasn't planning on speaking, so I'm sorry. I'll try again. Valerie Smith, Santa Clara County, APS Program Manager. I just wanted to thank Marty for his comments about individual needs and individual outcomes. I think this is an area that really needs to be developed more in aging and adult services. And I just wanted to call out the APS Home Safe program. And the reason why I'm calling that out is because it started as a pilot program, and Vivian, I know you were instrumental in your group in getting this program to become a permanent program. But one of the things that's so fascinating about it is that the APS program, you know, through HomeSafe is given the flexibility to work with individuals to determine what their needs are to maintain their housing, for independent living skills, for all sorts of things that APS isn't normally able to provide funds for. And while our numbers are small because it's, you know, there's limited funds, I think the successes are huge. I can just tell you in our county, there was a elder in a home that had been there for, the person had been living in the home for over 30 years. And it was so full of stuff. They were living in a tent in their yard and using buckets to for their bathroom needs and eating canned food. And this person had an income and had, you know, some resources, but code enforcement was red tagging their home and they were going to demolish it. So we were able, and we partner with a community-based agency, but APS and the community, it's Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, we were able to go out and actually spend the time to engage this client where no one had been able to do that before. And ultimately, I'll just make it short, we saved the home from being demolished. We got all the repairs done. We got the house cleaned out. We got the person new furniture and appliances. And, you know, I'm not saying that we can do that for every single person, but for that person, that was critical. And not only that, the community benefits because the community was upset about the condition of the home and, you know, complaining about blight and, you know, all kinds of things. So not that that's a solution for everything, but I just really am liking how we're able to tailor services to individual needs more so with HomeSafe than we ever have been before. So just wanted to give that as an example. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for uplifting that, Valerie. And I think even beyond the, you know, the individual who was helped through APS in your example, we are not currently capturing that impact on the community, like you're saying. Like we don't really have a way to capture how the money spent on that individual and, you know, securing their housing and keeping their housing impacted people who potentially were living with them, people who live next door to them. It's kind of amorphous, but there is a great benefit. And having that one person be able to stay in their home instead of ending up on the street or potentially in a facility is really important. And I agree with Marty. I think we're not really capturing at this point with the data all of the potential impacts that we have with the work that we're already doing. And that could be impacting funding going, you know, moving forward as well, because we are often trying to defend our programs and show that they are valuable through data, but what kind of data are we collecting beyond just the basic data, like Marty was mentioning, of just, you know, the person was served, this, you know, this is the service that they received, and this is how much money was spent.
Thank you, Vivian. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say really quick, I want to add to that too, like another metric that's not counted really or measured is that person also could have been showing up at the ER, you know, the hospital ER, if APS and HomeSafe hadn't been able to kind of intervene in that way. Because when code enforcement, you know, demolishes the home, like where's the person supposed to go? So initially they might have health needs. So I could see potentially them going to ER and then our ER having difficulty finding placement for that person, and maybe they're not going to meet criteria for shelter. So, I mean, it just kind of like is this domino effect, right, that we prevented. But again, how do you measure that? Yeah. Thank you, Vivian.
Janie?
I think Jane's having some trouble unmuting. Is someone has admin controls, could they unmute her?
I think Janie has to do it. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
have that power. She's able to unmute. But I think it's on her end. I'm sorry, Janie. I wish I could help you.
I want to hear her curse again.
There we go.
Perfect. Great to
Great.
have you, Janie.
Oh gosh, I am sorry. I don't know what was happening with my computer. Yeah, it just dawned on me. I know that the funding sources that we've come to depend on, I think for at least the next several years, are going to be totally gone. And I'd like to have us look at other potential areas of help that we can utilize when we probably it'll have to be at the local level. We were talking about the independent living centers, utilizing those nonprofits probably more for some of our work, but also looking at the corporate structures. We know that there are a lot of corporate organizations that have these programs where the employees do volunteer work and stuff. I mean, I just think we really have to start thinking outside of the box as to how we can get the help for these folks when you're looking at servicing the whole person, that we cannot do it ourselves with this climate, this financial climate, that we really need to look, as I said, outside the box and how we can utilize those resources that are out there that we don't normally even consider.
Thank you for sharing that, Janie. And so true. I was one thing that also came up at ASA was the presentation on California 2030 and I don't know if individuals have had a chance to read that report, but I highly recommend it. For those of you who might not be aware, they profiled different older adults individuals, so to make sure that the system would work for it, whether it was for somebody who might be unhoused or whether it was somebody who was more comfortable and living off of retirement. And I was thinking thinking about what you were saying, Janie, and Valerie and Marty, thinking about how even within services, profiling services from that way, right? So profiling in terms of the different outcomes or the different players that come into impact to take that wider circle. Janie, as you were saying, I'm like, who now, if there's funding from a certain source, where could we look to, or where's the coordination, right? I think that the coordination that comes as Lisa brought up is very helpful in terms of other agencies or other resources being prioritized, and also even a statement of priority for services. I know within the elder justice community, something that a lot of us are very passionate about is restorative justice and bringing another pathway for adults dealing with elder abuse to work on these issues other than civil and criminal pathways. And one thing I think that has been challenging in bringing up that system is that there's not a lot of data on it. It's considered very experimental and pilot. So when you're trying to get that new resource for the community, it's difficult. But if we come together and build those profiles, even in terms of what Valerie was saying, being able to have experience reports or snapshot reports on how the person experiences the system, I think is equally as helpful as saying, oh, we had 100 people access the system in an X range of time. Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I think the comments about how important it is to evaluate programs is really, I totally agree with that. It's really frustrating, to hear Valerie talking about the great work that Home Safe is doing, and then, that's one of the programs that's on, that's really being affected in this budget. And so, how I think one of the things that we also should be talking about is how do we make those powerful stories known to the governor or to, other policymakers. I don't think we can wait until we have data, because it's going to be a long time in coming of what those impacts are, especially when you're talking about kinds of, you know, impacts that have effects on many, many people in different ways, and kind of, a ripple effect outwards. So, something that I think we really should be talking about is how we get those cases to the policymakers, because they're powerful.
Lisa, I think Robert made a comment in the chat, but Robert, if you would like to expand on that, I think it's related to what Lisa's talking about as well.
Sure. Hey, everyone. This is Robert Reyes Villagomez. I'm with Disability Rights California. And this kind of comes from my experience as a statewide organizer, former job. But I do think that connecting the data, and I agree with Lisa, that data normally comes like way after, people's lived experience using programs and getting the outcomes from these programs. That was just my comment, is really just saying connecting data, the anecdotal pieces, lived experience storytelling, and numbers. So if there's a way that we can connect consumers or people that use our programs and our networks to budget advocacy, and even, possible like key legislation or like bills that would get the budget that we need to create effective programs, I think that would be really powerful, because then we could put legislators in a position where it looks bad, if they disagree with the data that eventually will get collected if we push for it. People's lived experience, which is, qualitative data that's really important, and, put a respectful but appropriate amount of pressure on our representatives in the government. So that was mainly my comment. And I would say too, that I wanted to add was, I was also a caseworker, and I feel like that holistic program design that does meet people's needs, like in the at least medium, but ideally long term, makes it a lot easier to fight for. I know I was a rapid rehousing case manager in Los Angeles, and at the best we would have 2 years of a temporary rental subsidy. And I mainly served like seniors or people with disabilities. That was my caseload. And it was a tough feeling hooking someone up with with an apartment with that subsidy, but knowing that the subsidy would expire after 2 years and they would be severely rent burdened after that, even if they're working, it just doesn't work. And I was left with kind of a sick feeling, and our program was meant to try to work to get them on Section 8 or more permanent subsidies, but it's just that's a tough program too, with long wait lists and things like that. So yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for your comments. Alicia?
Thank you, everybody. Alicia Morales, Santa Cruz County Aging Director and Public Guardian, and I appreciate everyone's comments, actually. And I do think that, we're looking at such a unique population, especially older adults. And when you're looking at any housing programs, a lot of them are designed for younger people who just need an opportunity to kind of get a leg up, and then they can move on. But when we're looking at older adults, it's a totally different population. And so limited time subsidies actually, I think in the end, promote homelessness. So we really need to be looking at this group in a very different way. There is some proposed legislation with the current budget climate. Don't know if it's going to get passed, but there is some proposed legislation that is looking at subsidies for older adults, like $300-400 a month, which is not a lot of money, but research has shown is that amount of money can really help people preserve their housing and prevent homelessness. And compared to all the money that is put into these limited time subsidies to create something that would be more sustainable and more long-term, I think is really where we want to push the legislature to look. And also, as we're looking at a more tight budget season, I think we also have an opportunity to really see how we can better integrate all of these systems rather than have all of these individually bifurcated systems. We could really get a lot of benefit from integrating them and economy of scale and things like that to actually save money and be more effective. And in terms of equity, if we have more integrated systems across the state, then it won't be, there won't be such a distinction between like a rich county or community versus a less resourced community, which is what we see now. There is a lot of inequity in terms of how services are distributed, especially because of the funding sources for all the services for older adults and people with disabilities. So I would like us to really be thinking, and this was mentioned before, like thinking, Janie said this, like think outside of the box, think bigger, think bolder, and think about true system reform, not how to make the systems work the way they are now, but how to create more integrated systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. And I think it's one of the most helpful things about these meetings is all of us being able to speak from a legal services, from a county experience, from a state experience about that viewpoint of what the older adult might be experiencing. And when we see it's fragmented for ourselves, we can only imagine how the impact on the person who's living out that fragmentation.
I also
Yeah,
wanted to
I'm sorry, just one point on the fragmentation. Like I have been, on a personal note, my mother is total care, bed bound, paralyzed, but completely intact cognitively. She knows everything that's going on, but has zero control over her life. My brothers and I have been basically putting together care plans and taking care of her for the last decade plus. And it has been a challenge for me to navigate these systems to find care for her. And I have been working in these systems for more than 3 decades in 3 different counties. So for me, who's considered a subject matter expert in this area, to not know how to navigate these systems effectively for my own mother tells me that this is not working. It's just not working. I apologize for cutting you off, Vivian.
Oh, no, it's fine. I really appreciate your insight. And I think your personal story is very important as well. And I don't think it's uncommon. A lot of people who do have a lot of expertise in these areas still can't easily navigate the programs. I did want to uplift one thing that you said that I think is really important is looking at the programs and the funding and how is it tailored specifically to older adults and people living with disabilities, and how our programs and funding resources, understanding that these programs for these groups need to be different. We can't treat an older adult like someone who's in their 20s. It's not the same. We should have very different outcomes. We should be looking at funding longevity in a different way. Like I know that we try to do that, but I think there is more work to be done to make sure that the funders understand that these groups are distinct and have very different needs. And also the people who serve them have different needs. They need more time. They need to be highly trained. So just understanding that, and how do we build that into our programs. And I'll pass it on to Anna.
Thank you so much. Anna Acton with the Department of Rehabilitation, and I work in the Independent Living and Community Access Division, and it just really resonates with me, kind of your conversation. So, I also know about the programs and services and have stumbled and had a hard time navigating them, even as a person with a disability myself who works in the field, right? And so it's very much resonating. I think that this has been an ongoing issue we need to build the cultural competency of the systems to serve people with disabilities and older adults, right? So through cross-training, through coordination and collaboration, a lot of the work that we've been doing around no wrong door type of principles, building systems that are truly person-centered, that understand that, you know, everyone has individual needs, and to really work with them to meet their individual needs and leverage their strengths, right? So I think, you know, to me, navigation's key. Building cultural competency, cross-training, and helping people navigate. We need places for people to go to get information, but we also need to recognize that some people need a lot of support, right, to navigate the various silos and eligibilities and program requirements. So we are working a lot on no wrong door kind of initiatives. We're just beginning those conversations. But to me, adult protective services, older adult programs are so key to all this, right? The eligibility workers, the benefits counseling that's needed. So we've been working a lot with the independent living centers and the AAAs, right? On like aging and disability resource connections. But like we have to engage with the county, right? And eligibility and adult protective services are doing such critical programs, as well as, you know, other disability specific programs. But I just really appreciate it. There's so much to be done here. And I think, you know, there's a lot of leadership thinking around this topic. So really appreciate your input on this.
Thank you for everybody for sharing their insights. And I think the reframing of the challenges before us and being able to prioritize the common threads. I really love what you just said in terms, Anna, in terms of the navigators, the system navigators as either something that's built in or in the interim, because no matter the shift, having that type of value or priority within a system can help ease some of the complexity that somebody enters. I also wanted to uplift, if you haven't seen, the CDA has a new campaign called Start the Conversation. And I really appreciate that campaign, because there's something valuable about building information bridges, as we are doing here today, even across sector, that really does have immediate value on the communities we serve. And I feel like that's something that's at the forefront of our work, being more proactive, so that when somebody starts within the system, they're not experiences complete fragmentation, which, you know, and I also just wanted to thank Alicia for sharing your personal story, which is as we deal with the families we serve, but within our families, we also experience that same complexity of seeing how difficult, once you start engaging with it from a personal level, it is for the families we serve. So thank you for sharing that. I think at this time, we're going to move on, and we'll continue the conversation throughout, but move on to the updates from the committees. And I believe Vivian will start us off.
Yes, and there's slides, I think.
Stephanie, can you put up the slides?
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay, so yes, I'm Vivian Mbaku. I'm the Director of Equity and Elder Justice at Justice and Aging, and I'm also the Chair of the Legal Services Subcommittee. So I'll provide some brief updates, and then we will go into a bit of a discussion related to the MPA Day of Action and how that impacts our three subcommittees. Next slide. So just briefly going over the Legal Services Subcommittee mission. So we are the Legal Services Subcommittee within the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council. And we have endeavored to formulate strategies to ensure that every older adult in California has access to comprehensive and reliable legal services, empowering older adults and adults with disabilities to protect their rights, maintain independence, and lead fulfilling lives with dignity, creating a centralized information hub for legal services resources, identifying gaps, creating best practices and recommendations regarding legal services, identifying resources, including funding opportunities to enhance legal services organizations, emphasizing elder justice in the master plan for aging, and providing recommendations to the legislature that creates an ongoing funding opportunity that does not limit resources for services. Next slide. So since our last full council meeting, we meet as a legal services committee. We aim to meet monthly. So we've had a few presentations of note. We participated in a presentation from Lauren Klein of the Legal Aid Association of California. She presented on an article that LAC participated in on the issue of public interest drift and its impacts on legal service delivery in California. There is a link to the paper, and you'll be able to access that with the published slides. But this idea of public interest drift is the ability of legal services agencies to maintain attorney staff, and how, because of many things, including the amount of student loan debt that legal services attorneys and attorneys in general in the state and in the country hold, and lower salaries from legal services compared to the private sector, how that leads to people not staying in legal aid for very long, and moving on to other higher paying jobs that are also in general less stressful, as legal aid work tends to be very stressful, like a lot of social services work. So the paper and Lauren discussed in our committee meeting about ways to increase staff retention and lessen this drift, because every time a legal aid attorney is trained and learns about the work and then ends up leaving after a year or two, that knowledge walks out the door and the organization is burdened with hiring again and training someone up again. So this is a detriment to the organizations and then therefore to their clients, who don't get the benefit of someone who has been doing a specific area of law for a really long time. So this is an issue that the subcommittee is interested in, because it also connects to our interest in raising salaries and also mitigating the impacts of extreme student loan debt that plague legal services attorneys and impacts the ability to staff legal aid organizations, especially in rural areas of the state. Our next meeting, we will be preparing goals to present at the MPA Day of Action, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes, but that will be the subject of our next meeting. And then one of the other issues that we have been discussing is existing legal aid referral systems and how non-legal aid organizations like district attorneys or private attorneys, et cetera, can connect with legal aid when there are potential clients. So the situation that we've been looking at is whether or not there are any ethical restrictions or any restrictions under any kind of lawyer rules that would prevent like a prosecutor from saying, oh, we are not going to pursue this case, but there may be civil remedies for an older adult who's a victim of abuse or exploitation, and being able to refer that case to a legal aid organization with the understanding that there's no guarantee or requirement that the client engage with legal aid, but giving them the option that this might be an option for them, or they could pursue private counsel. And I think the next slide is Achilles, and I will pass it over to Achilles.
Hi everyone, my name is Achilles Cerrone. I'm the APS Program Director with the City and County of San Francisco and the chair of the Adult Protective Services Subcommittee. And I would be remiss not to mention anything about the deep concerns we have in the APS world about the proposed cuts. Some of my colleagues here mentioned how impactful engagement with older adults with disabilities who are in harm's way, the impact of becoming engaged, and the dedicated funding for APS to promote that engagement with APS clients is being severely impacted. And so is the Home Safe program, which one of my colleagues mentioned clearly and vividly how helpful that program has been. So these cuts really impact the ability of APS programs to engage with APS clients, which is really the key to success. These are complex cases, as many of you may know. Next slide. That being said, in our subcommittee, our mission, excuse me, is to think of a system where every older adult and adult with a disability receives a timely response to whatever issue that is related to abuse, neglect, self-neglect, and exploitation is. And in addition to that, to see how the services, the system in each county, in each region that is designed to assist individuals, how they can coordinate well for a timely intervention and a successful outcome. Next slide, please. So this is an update of what we have been doing. We've been working on this for several months, a couple of years now, and some of the areas that we identified early on, and some of you might have heard through public comment, is some of these reports of suspected abuse of older adults, adults with disabilities, either are not easy to make, or they are, the caller is referred somewhere else. And as a result, there's not a timely intervention by the right agency that is equipped to provide a meaningful response. So what we have been working on is how could we make reporting of abuse, regardless of setting, whether there is someone in skilled nursing, assisted living, in the community, in their home, anywhere, that is an older adult, an adult with a disability, facing a type of abuse, neglect, self-neglect, or exploitation, and that these reports are made to one number in that region, in that county, depending on what makes sense. And by making that call to that number, then these reports could be better assessed for response time, for what would be most helpful for that individual when the call is made, and to ensure that if an immediate or a prompt response is needed, that is done timely. Not replacing 911, we're talking about reports that people would make otherwise to different numbers that they currently make, but making it to one number where these calls could be triaged and ensuring that the right response system will respond and coordinate with other response systems at the local level. That's where we are for now, and we will be working on the next step, which is after the initial response, what do these agencies do with information in hand? We have state agencies that are mandated and with jurisdiction over some of these cases, or many of these cases. Are they getting these cross reports? So we want to make sure that local agencies, the local response system, can receive the prompt cross reports for a timely intervention, but also for more elaborate and needed interventions on complex cases, that the other systems designed and needed at the table receive these reports, that they come to the table to collaborate, to design ways forward on behalf of older adults and adults with disabilities in harm's way. And this will also connect with systems like legal aid, civil remedies, and when need be, maybe conservatorship, or at least discussions to prevent going to that step if other resources are available and mechanisms. So that's the status of our subcommittee. And next is, I don't know if we want to take questions now or go to Bertha. It's up to you, Bertha. How do?
However you'd like, Achilles.
Okay, Jamie or Janie?
Yeah. Yes, Janie. Thank you. This is Janie Whiteford with Seeking California IHSS Consumer Alliance. I would like to add to this for you to look at the response that you give to the person that's making the report. I've made several reports, And I never hear back as to where. I don't need to know I just want to know that they're actually looking at it, that my report had something happened. And that's not happening all the time. It certainly hasn't happened to me here in Santa Clara County.
Thank you, Jenny, and that is duly noted. And I know that there's been interest in that, not only here in California, but nationally through some recent research that has been done. And so thank you for that comment. Bertha.
Thank you, Achilles. So now we'll transition over to the update slides. My name is Bertha Sanchez Hayden. I am the subcommittee chair for conservatorship, and I'm a directing attorney at Batsedic Legal Services, providing direct services to older adults and adults with disabilities and caregivers. So we'll transition to the next slide. So in our mission statement of the conservatorship subcommittee operating within the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council as part of the Master Plan on Aging, we also aim to center equity and to formulate strategies to educate the public professionals who work with older adults and adults with disabilities about probate, conservatorship, and other decision-making tools such as supported decision-making, advanced healthcare directives. We also seek to identify current data sources and to make recommendations on how to streamline and centralize data collections for probate conservatorships. We've had so much discussion about the importance of being able to tell full stories, impacts of projects, or impacts of systems on individuals. And within the conservatorship world, there seems to currently be a lack of that information. So data has really been at the forefront of what we seek to do. We also seek to identify gaps in the conservatorship system and make recommendations to improve or augment services for conservatees, and identify gaps and best practices and make recommendations to streamline referrals between adult protective services and the public guardian programs. As we transition to the next slide. So part of the way that we are working on achieving our goals is by holding listening sessions with agencies that are part of the probate conservatorship system, but don't necessarily interface with each other on a daily basis. And so we've been lucky enough to have Fatima Filisor from CASCI, the president of the come to speak to us about the perspectives from the probate investigators, and also Chief Rebecca May from the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau. Both of these individuals were able to provide presentations to our subcommittee group for us to better understand how probate conservatorship system operates within in the case of Chief May, to be able to say how it operates from a professional fiduciary's point of view, what are in terms of their eligibility requirements, the reporting requirements, and all the important work that the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau does to uphold the integrity of the system of those serving as professional fiduciaries. Also, we were able and thankful to Fatima for coming and giving us more insight into the probate investigators. And although within the 58 counties, giving us the perspective of how those probate investigations play out, what's in common, what might be different in several counties, so that as we do talk about system improvements, we're not talking in this monolithic way, but are really talking within detail and being able, I think, as Elisa brought forward, to be able to talk about different counties' experience with specificity. Next slide. We also have been lucky enough to hold listening sessions or have presentations from our own subcommittee members, and that is Lisa Nierenberg from the California Elder Justice Coalition. Lisa and the California Elder Justice Coalition are working on a special project. I've listed the page number, the site there. I'll try to put it in the chat box after. And they received a new grant from the Judicial Council of California for protecting the rights of adults under conservatorship. And it's a 35-month project to identify court practices for ensuring due process and accountability in conservatorships. So that was great to see that project is underway, and to have subcommittee members who can share updates with us. And also Jim Birchfield from Justice and Aging, if you haven't had a chance and you're interested on the subject, did a great from the national perspective piece on equitable guardianship reform, looking at different briefs from policy to ageism to different, and how it impacts different communities. So highly suggest those. All of this is information that we're taking, I think, to build the information bridges for ourselves in the subcommittee group to better understand and be able to inform our recommendations going forward. Transitioning to the next slide. So now we will open it up for committee questions and discussions. And we also wanted to use this opportunity, although we know that individually we are all talking about these issues and formulating our recommendations in our subcommittee groups. We would like to take this time, which is a unique opportunity where we're all together to focus in on the hot topics and what we might all be thinking about as we go into these smaller sessions with our Marty.
Thank you. Marty Yamoto, dad, family member, CDCAN, California Disability Aging Community Action Network. Hey, thank you, Bertha. You closed it out really perfectly. And thanks for all your work on the subcommittee. And by the way, I just love Vet Zedek. They have been a tremendous force in all the 40 years that I've been working as a statewide advocate. I just want to, first of all, I appreciate the reporting on the community, the listening sessions. My question is for all the subcommittees, actually, are we, I think there's a need, but I don't know if you all have tried it. And so I don't want to assume that you haven't, but listening sessions that actually talk to people in various communities. And then how do they view the work that we are doing in these subcommittees? Because sometimes I think inadvertently, if we don't do that, we're talking amongst only a certain part of people who are in this interest area, forgetting the people who are either in need of it, in need of adult protective services, meaning the families who are impacted, or the people in need of legal services, especially legal services, by the way, Vivian. I mean, oh my God. But also conservatorships is a big issue that impacts families and individuals, and to hear the concerns or problems they're facing. Because what happens, I just keep worrying that there was a presentation a year ago or more that it was done for the best purposes. I don't know if it was done by the subcommittees. And I was personally, I don't want to say offended, but I didn't like their approach because it was using these different case studies that actually were fictitious, but it was all from the point of view of government agencies. And so it assumed that a family member in a nursing home was sort of suspect of causing abuse. It never spoke to the viewpoint as a family member or an individual who was subjected to abuse or whatever. And maybe there's a different viewpoint. I mentioned that to Susan, and luckily I think they're trying to retool when we do case studies like that it's not just from the viewpoint of the reporting agency, it's from the viewpoint of the people being reported on. But that said, I just really encourage that we really do listening sessions with people in individual communities. And by the way, the other thing I was going to say, well, not was, because I guess I'm saying it now, we really need to push the issue of equity. I know that was said at the front of our meeting. I just don't know if I just think we all, me included, have to do more to push that issue of equity, which means reaching out and engaging with communities, like to this meeting and to the subcommittee work. When we need for our meetings language interpreters beyond ASL, meaning we need Spanish language interpreters, we need people who speak Chinese, Vietnamese, then I think we are reaching communities that are not being listened to at all. Because like this meeting and the Disability Community Living Committee, we don't have language interpreters beyond ASL. I just came from a meeting yesterday. I'm on the master plan for aging. I've been a long time advocate on people with developmental disabilities and also people with disabilities. There was hundreds of people there, and many of them spoke only one language, Spanish. So there were language interpreters in person and in the virtual side of the meeting, along with Chinese and other languages. So I just think, I cannot believe that on the issue of elder and disability justice, or DACLAC, that people with disabilities or developmental disabilities, that there is no people who don't speak another language other than English or using ASL that we need to engage with. So until I see language interpreters for actual language like Spanish or other languages, I think we should not pat ourselves on the back, not that we are. But you know what? Last thing I'm going to say, we are the good guys. And I think often we don't think we're capable of not doing things that are inequitable or not promoting ways to reduce disparities. But guess what? Good guys, good people often don't do good things all the time. And we don't like to hear it, right? We get offended thinking, hey, we're good. But anyways, I raised that issue. I don't really, I know that it may cause some discomfort. Frankly, that's my role as an advocate, to cause discomfort. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty, for sharing, and then for setting that benchmark that we can all set for ourselves with these meetings, and that we could, I think, as Jackie shared, one of the things that she said is, what is our goal and how will we know that we got there, right? And I think what you just shared is something that we can all measure in terms of making sure that, you know, although the work of this group might take place in different areas, that these larger community groups, that we do more work to be able to bring different community members in, so we can share out the important information, and so that people that are also local advocates can be our partners in what we're trying to do. And thank you for the feedback in terms of meeting with community members. I think all of us who are our subcommittee is pretty diverse. So I think within listening sessions, we tend to elevate our direct frontline work within these, but we should certainly think of what other ways we can incorporate and centralize those viewpoints. Now is the portion where I think we are wanting to discuss the day of action. And again, I said, although the nitty-gritty of the recommendations will happen in the subcommittee group, if you're not part of a certain subcommittee, like if you're not part of APS, or if you're not part of legal services or conservatorship, and you'd like to share your viewpoints, or even if you'd like to share out what you might be bringing into your subcommittees, now is a great time to do so. I'll share personally. I work in legal services. I've dedicated my whole life my whole career to legal services. So I really appreciate the work that the legal services is doing. As we center those recommendations, I would just say how I think that there's been a shift, that for the first time in my career, where I see less people entering legal services or professionals leaving legal services sooner. And I think that is such a loss, and the importance of creating a structure that fosters and keeps experts within my own team that I get to work with. Most people have been part of this team for over 10 years. They've been part of bringing in new innovative programs, such as World Elder Abuse Day programming, such as elder abuse restraining order clinics, such as being part of the medical legal partnerships or forensic centers. So I just want to take a moment to applaud the work of the legal services subcommittee for recognizing that issue and for helping to maintain and bring attention to our profession.
I just wanted to add, I really appreciate Marty's comments, and add that on the back end, we have also been trying to integrate more community voices into our subcommittees. So while the applications for just general council membership, I believe, is closed and will open at some time, but I'm not 100% sure, our subcommittees are always open for people to attend and join and assist. So if you do know someone who's a community member, they have viewpoints that are very important to be heard about any of our subcommittees, please reach out, because we would love them to join. I think it would be very impactful to have people who receive the services that we're talking about to join our subcommittees and learn about, the other side of them, and we can learn from them, from the consumer side as well. And I think that would be really helpful. I really appreciate Berta's comments about legal aid. When we were developing these original, priorities for the Legal Services Subcommittee, we all agreed that the work that legal aid attorneys around the state, the work that they're doing is great, but they're really hindered by funding and the issue of people leaving the profession or not even joining the profession because of financial constraints and other issues. So we have to develop, all three subcommittees have to develop one recommendation that will go to the MPA Day of Action, and that will be very difficult to do. But any comments that people have on, things that they think are really important and ways to develop these goals will be really helpful. And also just to set the stage for us thinking, before I pass it over to Lisa, who I see has her hand up, last year's MPA Day of Action, or not last year's, but was it last year? I can't remember. The original one, 2 years ago, thank you, was a really great day. And the one thing that I took away from it, and I think is really important for us to think about, is that as people were presenting, their priorities or the things that they thought were most important, there was so much overlap. And I did not see that as duplicative. I actually saw that as clear that we were all on the same page about what is actually the most important thing and how we really have opportunities to collaborate, because we're all thinking about the same ways that people are interacting with programs and services, the same problems that people are having across programs, services, and agencies. So I think, as we go into this Day of Action, as people are thinking about their participation, it's a really great opportunity to find the commonalities amongst our different issues, and being able to use that to, collaborate together and use our voices and power together to further what we're actually trying to do. And I'll pass it over to Lisa.
Yeah, first of all, Marty, I think, thank you for that. And I think we've at some point talked about having some more listening sessions in the community, and I hope that that happens. I've participated in several of the subcommittees, and I think that the groups are really doing a great job in equity issues and in considering them. And I hope that that comes through in our presentations for the event in the fall. Just as an example, Vivian has talked about the issue of lack of equity across the state in terms of legal services. But I think it's also important to bring up some of the things that have come up in those meetings of, when we've talked about the need for estate planning, for example, or advanced directives. Sometimes a lot of people have the impression that those kinds of services are for people with assets. And in our group, in the legal services group, we've talked about how, no, it's not just for people with assets. It's for, to make sure that we are, that we have a intergenerational transfer of wealth, that that estate plans are really important for everybody. And I think with the discussions about adult protective services, we've talked about, there are communities that have, been negatively impacted by the system, by the legal systems and adult protective services. And I think that, the kinds of approaches that Achilles and his group have been talking about, that really, the one-stop shop, or the, no wrong door, where we can bring in early on, when reports are made, of alternatives to some of those, more restrictive alternatives, and to, be diverting clients to services that are more acceptable to them from a cultural perspective, and all those perspectives. I just hope that when we do our reports in the fall, that we bring up those equity issues front and center as we talk about the work of the committees.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for beautifully putting together that thread of the work that we're doing by using estate planning as an example. Estate planning, as you said, has traditionally been seen as a wealth management tool, but it really is a social justice tool. It's an elder abuse prevention tool. And all three of our subcommittees have an important part to play and value in looking at that. If somebody who was at the previous Day of Action, I would also like to share out for council members who perhaps were not at the previous Day of Action, the experience or something that you really valued that you hope will also be included in the recommendations. Please also feel free to share that out. And thank you, Marty, for the comments in the chat box. So I know Vivian and Achilles, were you at I know Vivian, you said you were at the previous day of action in terms of the comment at that time. Do you recall what some of the common issues that were coming up were that were interconnected across?
I think one of the ones I remember was HCBS and just the, emphasis on making sure that people were able to stay in their homes and receive services. I believe there was a panel towards the end that was very interesting from family members of caregivers, and I found that really compelling. Just hearing, like Marty mentioned, hearing from people who are consumers, talk about their experience of being caregivers, receiving respite care, just the benefits that they had received from the caregiving organizations that are available throughout the state of California. That's what I can think of right now. I'm not sure if anybody else can remember.
Lisa, Achilles, were you? Achilles? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was there. I remember, it's been some time, but there was a lot of talk about homelessness and preventing homelessness, for example, aging in place. One of the recommendations for the Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council was to fully fund APS and legal services and public guardianship. So it feels like we're not in that direction right now with the current, state budget, proposed cuts. But the overall spirit has been aging in place, enhancing the resources from like CalAIM by diverse programs to like really become more interconnected. That's what I got out of it last time.
I now want to see something really nice. Actually, I thought I was impressed with the energy that was in the room. I don't know if the rest of you felt, but there was a sense of energy and optimism. I agree with you, Kelly. We seem to be going in the wrong direction on the funding part since then, so we got to work on that issue. But there was a sense of optimism and energy. And Vivian, I think you're right. There were people there also from our own council who were there in the smaller rooms who were able to speak on personal experiences. And I thought that was really, really good too. So just the energy though, I think sometimes we have to share, be with each other and share that we're in this together and see each other like that. And I was really impressed with that, which I think hopefully we'll have that same level of energy and optimism.
Yeah, I think after this conversation today, I think what's very at the center of my mind is making sure that once we formulate our recommendations, that we do take that opportunity, if we do have access to be able to speak directly to community members and have like informal conversations to see what their feedback is before we elevate that, so we can make sure to be inclusive of that. Well,
also, just add, Berta, I think also as we think about these things and our recommendations, I think it's also important to remain flexible, knowing that there's always going to be something new that will change the ways that we're addressing issues. For example, in between the last council meeting and this council meeting, we've had OAA reauthorization come out. We've had APS, the first ever APS federal rules come out. There's a lot of change in our area right now. So we also just need to remain nimble and understand that, there can be new ways to think about things. We might have to reprioritize depending on new sources of funding, new laws that are coming out. So even though we're in a not great budget situation right now, I'm actually really just optimistic because there's so much interest in the areas that we are advocating for. And I think there's a good opportunity for us to get some things that we want. I know we're not always going to get everything that we want, but I think there's some good opportunities. And I know I think we're running up on time. Berta, are we running up on time? I think so.
Well, I think we have a few more minutes
Okay.
I think so before we turn it over to Carol.
I just wanted to, before I forgot, just highlight in terms of opportunities to keep talking about these types of issues. There is going to be a elder abuse conference in San Francisco, June 18th, sponsored by Legal Assistance for Seniors. And I'll be presenting, and I know some other people here will be presenting. So I just wanted to highlight that. I know Ranjana can put the Eventbrite in the chat, but I just want to highlight that because it was really invigorating and wonderful to see Berta and Achilles in person at ASA. And I think these opportunities to engage in person are really important as well. And I'm hoping that the Day of Action can be as invigorating and really, we can do a lot of work in person. We love Zoom because it allows everyone to participate, but these in-person opportunities are just as valuable as well.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, it is for those of us who have been in this field for a long time, it does still feel to continue to be a very special and like time is of the essence, in terms of the work that we're doing and staying connected to address these issues. And also for all of you who are holding World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, please do share those out through the Engage group that can be sent so that we can further elevate them and make sure that people know about those important community events. With that, thank you so much all for the discussion. It's so incredibly valuable to hear your insights from your different areas, but also to keep at center how we should measure our own success. And I at least feel better equipped and more centered as we go into our subcommittee meetings to be able to formulate our recommendations. Carol, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. We're going to move into our break. So we will come back at, I have 11:55. Is that a thumbs up, Rajana? 11:55, right? So please take a break and we will come back. Thanks. Stephanie, can you put the break slide up? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that everyone had a refreshing break and are ready to dive into our next agenda item.
Can we have the ASL? Oh, great. Tulip, you're ready to go. Great. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. I'd like to welcome Faye Gordon from the Administration for Community Living, Regional Administrator for Region 9. We're thrilled to have you here to provide us with an overview of the new regulations regarding the OAA. So at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Faye.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, Ranjana, and thank you for organizing this to the members of the committee. My goal today and what I was asked to do is to speak about the new Older Americans Act regulations, and I am going to do that. I will go into that in more detail. But as has been mentioned previously, there has been a flurry of federal activity on the regulatory front. So I want to go into some of that in detail as well. So I apologize if my slides don't exactly match up with,
Faye, can you speak up? It looks like the volume is pretty low. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning. Is this any better? Are you hearing
It's a little bit better. If you could even go higher, turn it up to 11.
Up to an 11. Let's see here. I apologize, everyone. Oh, that is so frustrating when this happens.
Now there's no sound. No sound.
No sound at all.
Oh, there we are. We have sound.
Okay. Are you?
I think you're good. Thank you.
I'm gonna sit really close to my computer. Okay, please stop me and please let me know if the interpreter has trouble hearing, and I will definitely stop. Thank you. All right, so I want to discuss a few other federal activities that have happened as well as the regulations. So I apologize if my slides don't match up exactly with my presentation, but you all are very amazing with how advanced you are in the preparation. And unfortunately, with the federal government released a lot of things very recently. So I will jump into all of that. On the next slide, as I mentioned, my goal today, the agenda is to really talk about the Older Americans Act regulations, but I also want to introduce ACL's regions and share a little bit more about the role at the regional level and how it can be helpful to you. then highlight a few resources and hear from you about the regulations. So on the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ACL regions, and you can go to the next slide. So I assume you're all very familiar with the Administration for Community Living, given that you work on programs for older adults and people with disabilities. And these are exactly the programs that we fund states to provide. But I want to step back a little bit and talk about the Department of Health and Human Services. This is the cabinet level federal agency that ACL is an operating division under. And HHS divides the map of the US into 10 different regions. And some people don't know about this, and they don't know that there's actually a real person that is in each of these regions who is available as a front door person who can provide them with information about what's happening in their operating division. So for us here in Region 9, that's me. I am the regional administrator for Region 9. Region 9 includes California, all of you, as well as Arizona, Hawaii, Nevada, and 3 territories in the Pacific. So I have my phone number and my email address here because our purpose is to really be available to you to help answer questions that you may be having about ACL programs and initiatives, and more importantly, to direct you to the person who would be most helpful in answering those questions. We know these federal bureaucracies can be really large and overwhelming, and as we're implementing many programs, it can be challenging figuring out who to contact, and we are here and available to help you with that. So I bring that up for ACL as we're implementing a variety of different programs here at ACL. But I also want to step back a little bit and highlight these HHS regions at large, because every operating division within the Department of Health and Human Services has a regional contact, and they either have one person like ACL, but many of them have multiple staff members that you can contact and work with. So I know we have representatives here working on programs with people with physical disabilities and intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as behavioral health and other programs for children and families. So if you are working on an initiative that is led by, for example, the Administration for Children and Families, or a substance abuse and mental health initiative that's directed by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or if you're working on different health and civil rights issues and you need a contact within the Office of Civil Rights, all of those operating divisions have someone here locally that is working at the regional level who can assist you and provide contact information for you. So just wanted to highlight that because I know sometimes as we discuss all of this, it can feel very overwhelming and very distant, and I want to bring it down to a more local level. So on the next slide, I now want to jump into some of these new regulations, and I will get into the OAA in more detail, but I want to highlight 2 things that were brought up earlier in previous discussions, and that is the challenging budgetary climate and the very active regulatory environment that we're in. So we're in this very interesting phase right now at this stage at the federal level. And I will just say interesting because I'm a career employee and that's all I can say about that. But we are in an interesting time where we have a very challenging budgetary climate as far as appropriations and funding. So as many of you who have followed the news, you've seen a variety of budget negotiations and challenges and caps lead to real challenging budgetary realities at the operating division level and then at the state level. So we are working within those constraints. At the same time, the Department of Health and Human Services, which is a cabinet level agency and under the executive branch, has the authority to be releasing regulations that impact these programs. And in that area, the regulatory area, we have been very, very busy. ACL is not typically an operating division that does a lot of regulatory work. That is an exception this year. We've done quite a bit of regulatory work. And we are also very involved in other HHS regulatory initiatives. And that's what I want to mention right now. So I'm going to be doing a lot of links in the chat as I bring these pieces up, because I think they are relevant to our discussion. So the first piece that was mentioned before was the recent release of the first ever regulations for the Adult Protective Services Program. This is a very big deal. This is something that many of you worked on comments on and have had a lot of input in the process. There's a long runway to these APS regulations of several years. There was a webinar earlier this week to introduce the regulations, but significantly what I would also encourage you to attend is a Q&A session that will happen next week on the regulations. And it's rare that you get the opportunity to do a question and answer session with this level of technical assistance. So I'm going to put that registration info in the chat. Again, encouraging you to attend to that because that will help you understand the implementation of these regulations. The other big reg is OAA, which I'll get into in a moment. And those are the two big ACL pieces. But as we know, ACL deals with a lot of other agencies. So for those of you who work on programs for civil rights for people with disabilities and language access, we had a major regulation that came out of the Office of Civil Rights just, oh God, my time is blurring together. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And this is the Section 1557 regulations. This will impact a lot of healthcare programs and community programs. I'm going to put ACL's information about that in the chat because I think it helps explain some of the overlap with ACL programs. We also had a major regulatory announcement a few weeks ago from the Department of Labor and the Department of Health and Human Services on Section 504 regulations. This is also a critical regulation that was decades in need of updating and finally was updated. And that just came out a few weeks ago. And I'm going to put that announcement in here where you can find more detail. And I'm also going to catch my breath. I've been speaking very quickly, so let me take a sip of water as I put this chat in here. And then the final additional reg, which is actually probably the biggest of them all, came out of CMS, and CMS is the agency, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that does a lot of regulatory work. So they're not super new to the regulatory space. This is what they do. But this regulation, which is known as the Medicaid Access Rule, is a real groundbreaking regulatory initiative in that it focuses primarily on Medicaid managed care and home and community-based services. So I know there was previous discussion about the CalAIM program. This will have impact on that as well as other Medi-Cal programs. And ACL was very involved in providing insight and feedback on the development of this regulation because of the work that we all do in programs for older adults and people with disabilities. So that's it for the regulations outside of OAA, which I will get into, but I'm going to do one more link if you'll indulge me, because this year is the 25th anniversary of the Olmstead Rule. As many of us know, Olmstead is the Supreme Court decision from 25 years ago that interprets the constitutional right to access to live in the least restrictive environment and to protect the right to community living. And that is what funds and gives us the legal right to so much of the work that we do to really protect the rights of everyone who wants to live in the environment of their choice. So ACL is going big on the celebration of this. I mean, Olmstead is so critical to the work that we do. So I'm going to put the save the date in the chat for the 25th anniversary celebration for Olmstead. And now I'm going to get into a little bit more, I want to say boring, but a little bit more detailed work. So I will move away from the chat and move back to my slides. So in February, ACL released the first ever updates to the Older Americans Act regulation in over 30 years. So the last time the Older Americans Act was updated was in 1988. I encourage you all to imagine what life was like in 1988. If you can remember that, very, very different. And so we know that since then, a lot has changed. The population of the country of older adults has doubled. Here in California, the demographic shift of the populations that are aging have changed. And we know the needs of older adults are much more dynamic and complex today than they were over 30 years ago. What has not changed is the fact that older adults want to continue to live in their community and live independently. And we now have this constitutional interpretation through Olmsted that this is our right to continue to live independently. So we needed the regulations from the 80s to actually match the lived reality of older adults today. So if we go to the next slide. ACL did a lot of work to try to update these regs. And again, our goals with updating this was to make sure they align with current statute. The actual federal law of the Older Americans Act has been updated multiple times since the regulatory update. So we needed to make sure the regulations were correctly interpreting federal law, that they were reflecting the needs of today's older adults, and that they were making sure that they matched with the way that programs and services are being delivered in today's climate. We know there's been a lot of changes with the ways that programs contract with business organizations and work with different, social services and health entities, and we needed the regulations to match that current reality. Let's go to the next slide. I do want to know, as excited as we are about these regulations, and I get a little worked up with excitement, so I'm sorry if I'm speaking very quickly. I'm going to try to slow down, but there is a lot of momentum and excitement. However, these regulations are interpreting long established OAA rules. So we are interpreting what has been in the law for several years. These are not new initiatives from ACL. We're not coming up with new programs. We are trying to match the regulations to what has long been established in the OAA statute. So I know there was some concern about, changes coming out of nowhere, and these really are trying to match what's been in existing policies and sub-regulatory guidance in statute. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And let's talk a little bit about the timeline. I'm going to be a pretty high level here, and I'm going to pause. I know we're switching interpreters. Are we okay? All right, great, wonderful, thank you. So the regulations were released in February. We have a compliance date of October 1st, 2025. We really want to give states a long time to interpret the regulations, go through the work that they need to do to interpret them and implement them. And I'm going to go into some detail on that. However, as we all know, especially in a state like California that is massive and essentially its own country in its finances and size of government and everything like that, this is a huge process. And realistically, it's very possible a state will not be able to fully comply with the implementation deadline of October 1st, 2025. And so we have the opportunity for states to submit a plan for implementation called a corrective action plan if they're not able to meet that October 1st deadline. So let's look into this in more detail on the next slide. We have a number of final rules. We knew this was going to be a big deal. We knew that people were going to be overwhelmed. The reg itself is pretty long. So we have the rule up there. And actually, if you go to the next slide, we are trying to do as much technical assistance from ACL as possible. We know that there's a lot of ways to interpret things, and we want to make sure you're hearing from us. So we've got recordings of previous webinars on oversight and fiscal responsibility. Coming up in, let's see, today's the 16th, 2 weeks or 1 week, we have a webinar on Title III and VI coordination. So this is the coordination requirements for Title III, your nutrition and transportation programs that are typically run through the AAAs, their coordination requirements with the Title VI programs, which are the programs that fund services for older adults and tribes. So please go to our website and participate in this, because while this has been a long-standing requirement in the OAA that there is Title III and VI coordination, this regulation is really an opportunity to make sure that that coordination is happening. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to do future webinars. We know that contracting and commercial relationships with different health plans and other health providers is a big area of interest. So we're working on guidance on that. There's a lot in the regulation about disaster planning, because as we know, the climate has changed significantly in the last 30 years, and disaster response is a growing part of local area agency on aging and state unit jobs. And so there's a lot about that. as well as legal assistance in nutrition and funding formulas. So stay tuned for more on that. So on the next slide, I'm going to kind of breeze through these next 3 slides pretty quickly in the interest of time. But what they highlight is the process that states will go through to implement the regulations. So what we want states to do is look at their current policies and procedures, look at their current requirements, and try and discern, do we have this in place because this is a state initiative? Is this in place because it's an interpretation of a previous OAA regulation? Does this actually follow current regulations and current statute? And so acknowledging that this is a significant lift and a lot of work, it is an opportunity to assess whether current state and local policies actually match the current regulatory climate under these OAA regulations. So some of the questions that we have in here, and then on the next 2 slides, if you could just advance the next slide. And then the slide after that, really help programs determine where they will where they may need to update their policies and procedures. There may be a need to update administrative rules and different manuals and training materials. There might be legislation that's required to come into compliance. Contracts may need to change in order to comply, and that's why we intentionally have this long implementation plan with the opportunity for an extension beyond it, recognizing the way that that state and local regulations may need to change in order to comply with the rule. So let's go to the next slide. I'm going to skip over that one. That's also about determining how to make these updates. And I'm going to open it up, and I think I have, is it 5 more minutes that I have? I'd love to hear questions. As I mentioned, we at ACL are working on technical assistance and guidance on the reg, and so it's really helpful to hear from you about areas of concern or confusion so we can develop this technical assistance. So I will pause now, and I'm open to questions. And feel free to ask me anything. I mean, you can ask, it doesn't have to be about the OAA regs. I'm so happy to be here and happy to share any insight on anything else ACL related, if helpful. I see Alicia has a question.
Hi, Faye. I'm Alicia Morales, Santa Cruz County Aging Director and Public Guardian. And thank you so much for coming here today and your presentation. And you mentioned, there's a lot happening at the federal level, which is really giving a nod to older adults and people with disabilities. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight in terms of any discussions about funding, APS, training, program administration, any of that, especially in light of what we're seeing local at the county level. So just wonder if you have any information on that.
Yeah, I'll answer in sort of 2 different pieces. So on as far as actual funding that will be, distributed through the funding formula to the states that then make its way locally, that is all part of the federal appropriations process and the budget process. And I'll do that in like 30 seconds, basically, in the sense that about 1.5 years ago, Congress agreed to certain budgetary caps in order to release funding for fiscal year 2022. Those caps required all non-defense discretionary funding to be level funded for the next 2 fiscal years. So that's where our current fiscal constraints are coming from, is from this congressional agreement from 1.5 years ago. We were very fortunate within HHS and ACL that in the appropriations agreement that happened late in March for the rest of fiscal year 24, so through September 30th, 24, most programs received relatively level funding. But I do want to acknowledge that level funding, when you're in a high inflationary period in an area of growth, isn't exactly level funding because the need has grown. So that is a real challenge. So I don't know specifically how that then impacts the specific line item of the APS funding, but that is the environment that we're working in. As far as what you're seeing locally and how these regulations may impact that, I'd really encourage you to attend that May 21st APS reg webinar, because that's where they're going to be doing direct Q&A on the regs, and I think they can provide clear information on that. and your insight would be really helpful as they develop technical assistance. Yeah. All right, we've got just a few more minutes for questions. And I will put my email address in the chat as well. So if you have something you want to ask later on, feel free to put that in the chat. And I see that Marty provided some background on the Olmsted agreement. I'm sorry, on the old Olmsted case, which has led to Olmsted agreements in different states. So thank you for that background, Marty, in the chat. All right. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the conversation. And I'm really looking forward to the October 8th event. I can't wait to be there and learn more from all of you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Faye. I just want to extend our gratitude for your insightful presentation on the OAA final rule. I know it provided me with a deeper understanding of how the rule impacts older adults with disabilities, and the programs that we work on. So it was really insightful. Thank you so much. As we move forward to the Clarity team, if you could put the slides back up, please. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to Sarah Hooper, Denise Watt, and David Farrell, the Clarity team. Sarah is from UC Law, and she'll be providing information on resource tools for to begin the important process for financial planning for the future. So Sarah, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Wonderful, thank you. And do I have screen sharing capability?
You do not. Do you? We have your slides. Would you like to drive your own slide deck, I guess?
Oh, whichever you prefer is fine with us. If you have someone to drive for us, that's great. Or I'm happy to.
We have your slides. So
oh, fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes. So organized. Thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for having us. We're really delighted to be here and share our work and thoughts with you. And it's really wonderful to see so many familiar faces in this group. It's a formidable group, and if anyone can address these complex issues facing our state, it's this group. So as she said, I'm Sarah Hooper. I'm a professor of practice at UC Law San Francisco, formerly known as UC Hastings, where I also direct our consortium on law science and health policy. My colleague Denise Watt is an attorney and law fellow with us. And David Farrell is the principal at People Designs, which is a public health communications firm. I think Rebecca Sidore was also planning to be here in the audience. You met our colleague Rebecca at one of your previous meetings in which she shared another project of ours called Prepare. So this team collectively, next slide, please, has been thinking together for over a decade now about how we can create easy-to-use tools that support decision-making and access to resources for people with lower literacy and income who are less likely to access legal services and who may be particularly high risk for conservatorship. The inspiration for this work really comes from our direct services work. Although we could be accused of being academics, our work is really applied and is really drawn from our work working with patients and clients in the community, in hospitals, in our medical legal partnership, and alongside agencies like Legal Aid, APS, and the Public Guardian's Office. Next slide, please. And just briefly, I apologize for how busy this slide is, but really the main point here is that over the years, we've seen across these systems that we miss opportunities to engage really high-risk elders upstream, and the elders who most need to engage in good conservatorship prevention planning are the least likely to access it. And so that has really informed a lot of the work that we're talking about today. And so I'll turn it to David.
Thanks. As Sarah noted, I'm David Farrell. I'm really happy to be here. Can we get the next slide? So to address the issues and the needs that Sarah just covered, we designed a website called Clarity. Clarity is live now, so people can go and use it. You don't need an account, but you can create one and get a few extra features. It's planforclarity.org. So next slide, please. I just wanted to point out a couple of the sort of key objectives that drove what Clarity is and what it does right now. You can see those on screen, but I'll just point out three of the main ones. We really tried to follow a stakeholder-driven process where we actually got input from people who are going to be the end users of Clarity or are going to serve the end users of Clarity. We tried to be as evidence informed as possible. It is research informed, it is theory informed, and we are conducting multiple studies to try and improve it. One of the key goals or one of the key principles of Clarity is that it is going to be free, or it is free to individual users. And the other ones are up there. You'll hear more about those in a minute. So let's go on to the next slide. We did try to follow a very structured process in the development of Clarity. We took the time to develop a real initial framework among the Clarity team, which are experts in the various fields that we were trying to address. We had expert review. We engaged individuals, including health, financial, legal, advocacy, and communication professionals to review our initial drafts. And then we moved on to do a Delphi panel. We conducted a Delphi panel, which I'll explain in a moment, with 15 constituents over about a year. And now we're into the final phase of the initial development process, which is our user study, where we are trying to see how we did and where we can improve. We can move on to the next slide, please. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So the third step in that process was the Delphi panel. Over about a year, we did multiple rounds of review with 15 individuals from our 4 primary stakeholder groups, again, health, financial, legal, people with memory difficulties, and caregivers of people with memory difficulties. We learned a lot in the process. And a couple of the key findings that we found were, first of all, that through this iterative process of getting to the Delphi panel, Clarity is on track, according to this small group, in terms of information and potential to improve knowledge and to facilitate the planning process. We found that Clarity can be a helpful piece in a larger planning process, particularly within health systems and legal planning. And one interesting thing we found is that although most of our panel members indicated that Clarity as designed would be usable independently, people, particularly elder individuals and people with memory difficulties, are more likely to use it with somebody else. And that led us to make quite a few changes, actually, to facilitate sort of shared use of Clarity. And one of the nice things about the way this Delphi study was designed was we got a lot of qualitative data. So we got a lot of sort of direct, rich feedback from the individuals. And if you go to the next slide, I'll just quickly go through some of the things. So we did hear from caregivers. One of the things we heard from some of the caregivers was that it could be more broadly appropriate. It's not just for people with memory difficulties and their caregivers, but any senior population or other individuals. Next slide, please. We heard from some of the medical professionals that it could actually improve their ability to discuss financial and legal issues with their patients who come to them for more than medical care, obviously. And then next slide. We did hear from some legal professionals who indicated that the way Clarity was designed, it could be integrated into the larger process of planning and conducting and developing legal materials. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass it off to Denise now.
Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to take the next few slides. We'll walk you through a little bit of the tool itself. So as David mentioned, planforclarity.org is live. It is a 50-state tool, so we encourage you to visit it and explore. This is the homepage that you will be greeted with. And next slide, please. When you do go to Clarity, it will ask you to choose a state. So you can choose California. And explore what is there. These are the kind of main content areas that folks can explore. As you know, folks may have interest in different areas. They can choose to explore one topic, or they can progress linearly through the site. Next slide, please. This is just a quick example of the type of information that folks will see as they visit the subtopics. Next slide, please. And one key part of Clarity that really sets it apart from other websites providing information about financial and legal planning is the suite of videos. So one of the goals of Clarity was really to have videos to both show and demonstrate to folks how they can approach the process of legal and financial planning, and really feel empowered to have these difficult conversations. So there are several videos throughout the site. Next slide, please. And another really key part of Clarity is we want folks to not only absorb and take in all of the information about why they should do their financial and legal planning and the risks of not doing so, is that they feel empowered to take on next steps, so really take action. So one particular tool that we want to highlight for folks is worksheets. Next slide, please. So these are just a couple of examples of the worksheets that we currently have on Clarity, and that we hope to add more in the future as well. So these worksheets, just to back up, we are not providing actual legal forms on Clarity. So these worksheets are really designed for the professionals, for both the users of Clarity to kind of work with professionals as they go through their financial and legal planning. So for example, my goals and values would help a user. They can download the worksheet from the website, and as they're thinking about starting the financial and legal planning process, maybe talking to a lawyer, they can use these tools to help them navigate that process. Next slide, please. The other piece of Clarity that we really were intentional about when we approached the design is connecting people to trusted resources. So specifically trusted state and local agencies. So we wanted to make sure that folks weren't overwhelmed with a list of information. So we know the information's out there. Folks can Google and receive a whole list of potential places to go. So we really wanted to approach the resource section of Clarity with intention, just to make it easier for users, and also make sure that the information included is trusted. And we also do not include referrals to paid services. Next slide, please. I'll turn it back over to David.
Thanks. As I mentioned earlier, one of the key objectives of Clarity was to make it easy to access and use. And so to that end, these are some of the things that we tried to incorporate. I'll just point out a couple of quick ones. The content is written in a very plain language way, which, as we know, isn't that common in legal and financial information. We use a lot of videos and visual aids to try and demonstrate and explain concepts, as well as just demonstrate the process of going through the planning and working with a lawyer, talking to your healthcare provider, et cetera. And as Denise pointed out, we tried to incorporate and are adding more worksheets, easily and good-looking printed pages, and other features like that to promote shared usage and sort of offline usage to facilitate integration into the larger planning steps and processes. Next slide, please. And the last thing I'll say is that the last step in that process that I pointed out earlier on was the user study. And so we are in the middle of our user study right now. Through the user study, we are going to have about 30 users enroll in the study and provide us information about how usable, how useful Clarity is. Preliminary data, which is, we're a little more than halfway there right now, is indicating that it is highly usable on a usability scale that we are having people fill out. And then secondarily, we've just learned a lot more about the potential users and what their needs are, and you can read some of that right there. In the last part, in terms of self-efficacy is relatively high after using Clarity, etc. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Sarah now.
Great. So I just want to sort of highlight the last bullet really quickly because I think it tees up what I'm about to say next, which is that, and we find this on the medical advanced care planning side as well, that a lot of people may have thought about planning. They may have even talked about planning with people that they love, but a lot of people do not move along to actually complete legal planning documents or to then take other steps like sharing them with people that they have named. Next slide, please. So this is where we think that all of you and all of us have a really important role, which is to take tools like Clarity and integrate them into your workflows and be really intentional about starting to ask people systematically if they have engaged in formal legal planning. And when I'm talking to hospitals or health systems, I say the question that you can ask really simply is, have you named anyone that could pay a bill for you if you got really sick? And so it could be really simple screening questions that could lead to an opportunity to have a conversation about what additional planning people can or should do for the future. And so, you know, we are going to put this up. It's available now as a web page that is available to the public to use for free, but we think it will be most useful if we start to bridge those gaps between health systems, social services, and the legal community to try to push people along gently, supportively, but to really encourage people to think ahead and to actually take steps to plan really so that we can ensure that they have a voice in their own future care. And as we all know, healthcare decisions, personal care decisions are financial decisions. But we don't tend to incorporate, at least on the health system side, the financial and legal piece as much as we should. So we need all of these pieces working in tandem to really set people up to avoid the need for conservatorship to the extent that we can support that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we are working on dissemination and partnerships right now. As David said, we're finalizing the user experience study and hopefully we'll have a paper out on that soon. We are adding actually a whole suite of videos. So you'll see there are a bunch on there already. And we're adding about 8 more in the coming months. And we're continually updating the legal content. As everyone knows, the laws change, Medi-Cal rules change. So we are updating that information as well. We're really interested also in thinking strategically and in partnership with all of you and community and thinking about how we can expand the content and formats. So is there additional content that would be particularly helpful to certain populations? As we said, this was originally focused on older adults with dementia. And that was the grant funding that we had from the NIA as an initial population. Our users have told us that they think it's more helpful beyond dementia as well, which is really encouraging. But you know, we are interested in further tweaking and expanding on the content. And in the future, we would like to look at an efficacy and outcomes study. Next slide, last slide, please. So thank you. Here is our contact information, and we're really interested in your questions and feedback at this point. So thank you. And I see we just have about 4 minutes, but hopefully we can get through lots of questions in that time.
If there's not a question, I'm going to throw out one thing that I was supposed to mention that I failed to, and that is that we are about to release a Spanish language version of Clarity. So by April, it will be we'll have complete parity between Spanish and English.
Hi, Bertha.
Hi. I just wanted to once again applaud the work of Prepare and Clarity. I know your team came and presented to my direct services team, which was really helpful for us to be able to share this tool. Caregiving is a national issue, so oftentimes we have caregivers that are calling us that we might not necessarily be able to help them because they're not within our jurisdiction. But these type of national tools are so helpful to build cohesive plans between families. And I know one of my own team members said that they used one of your tools, and she was just really taken aback about how amazing it is that you're offering this for free and high quality, and how even conversations that she that works in this field wasn't anticipating or didn't even think to have with her own family as they were talking about future planning, and how your prompts really helped to elevate and ensure the family was all together in their planning. So thank you.
Thank you. That's really wonderful feedback. I really appreciate that. And yeah, there's a lot of sort of information about the need for planning. And certainly if you visit a lawyer, we'll walk you through that process, but there's not a lot that bridges that gap. And there's not a lot that is supportive once the planning has been done. And so we really wanted a tool that helped support people in the process of planning and feeling prepared and confident, and then also to support caregivers in feeling more confident about their role. So if it's been successful in at least one case, we have succeeded. Other questions?
No other questions? Sarah, is it okay if your team can put your emails in the chat? So if anyone has any questions later, or direct it to the Engage inbox, and we can forward it to Denise, Sarah, and David.
Absolutely. Please reach out. We'd love to hear more of your thoughts about how we can partner and get this important information out to our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the Clarity team, Sarah, Denise, and David. This tool is amazing, a person-centered approach, a great tool for adults and adults with disabilities and caregivers. I feel that your dedication developing this tool and elevating it and simplifying it is truly commendable to our community. So thank you so much. Next, moving towards the end of our agenda. Thank you. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Carol for public comments.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for staying with us. This is our public comment period of the agenda. Attendees, if you have a comment that you would like to make to the committee, now is your opportunity. You can press *9 if you are participating via phone, or you can use your raised hand icon on your Zoom toolbar, and we'll unmute your line. No hands as of yet. Give it a couple more minutes. Had a lot of discussion today, a lot of great information. We thank our committee members, and we thank our guests for all the information they provided us today. I think that we do have a hand up. Emily Dixon, I think you can unmute your line. Please give it a try. I think, Emily, if you want to unmute your line, you will have that capability. Oh, took her hand down. Okay, I am going to turn it over to, oh, we do, Emily, you do have your hand up again. I'm going to unmute your line. Go ahead. Can you unmute your line, Emily? I see your hand is up. We love technology, but sometimes it doesn't work with us. You are more than welcome to email your comment to us at engage, ENGAGE, at aging.ca.gov. We check that mailbox all the time and can respond or get your comment to the pertinent parties. So, Emily, if you're unable to get audio.
I think she's muted as well, Carol.
She has the capability to unmute herself.
Hello, can you
Hi,
hear
Emily.
me?
Great. Nice to hear from you. Go ahead, please.
I really enjoyed all of the websites that we can explore regarding the many topics you talked about this morning. And I'm wondering how I could get a list of those after the webinar is over.
After the webinar is over, we will be posting all of our information to the Cal HHS website. I'm not sure if you have access to the chat at this moment, but we can put in that link. But it is the Cal HHS website for the EDJCC webpage, and all the information will be posted there, including this video recording and a transcript as well.
Great, that's what I needed to know. I do have access to it, and I'll be sure to take a look. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily. Let's stop this. We have no other hands, so who will be closing us out? Will it be Sarah?
Yes, it will be Sarah.
Okay, Sarah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. This was a fabulous meeting. I really appreciate our chair, Bertha Hayden, as well as our subcommittee chairs and all of the presenters. I think that this was a wonderful discussion and leaves us with a lot of excellent work in advance of the next meeting and also in preparation for the day of action. So thank you all. Keep up the really important work, and we at the Department of Aging are really grateful for this, and a special shout out to Ranjana for organizing all of this work and for advancing the work in partnership with all of you. So we appreciate you all. So have a wonderful day.
Thank you.